Time now for St. Helens Town Talk Cafe with Steve Toski. The opinions expressed on this program are not necessarily those of KOHI Radio, staff, or advertisers. Now, here's Steve.
Hello, everyone. It's a rainy Friday, March 1, 2024, and we're in the cafe. Of course, it's booming because we are serving crab cakes. Crab cakes, fresh Dungeness crab cakes, caught with the proper and appropriate licenses and run through whatever kind of regulatory requirements and then thrown on the grill. And Kim is not here today. She is off at a math competition with her son. And so she's got a speller and a math wizard. So Kim, again, is taking another day off. I know all of you are missing her, but again, you can hear that the place is still busy. We're not about to close up. Come in for some crab cakes today. And who should walk in as I'm sitting here today eating on my second plate of crab cakes but Dave Sass, the man, the legend. How are you, Dave?
Just fine. How are you?
Excellent, excellent. And, you know, you are a man that is blessed with a beautiful wife, Mindy Sass, right?
Correct.
Yes, and you got, I understand your daughter recently got engaged.
Yes.
Yes, congratulations.
Thank you. I think she enjoys it, too.
Yeah, she's running Sass at Home with Mindy, right?
Correct.
I know. Everybody's going to call in and say, you know, as we drift into the soundproof room here, everybody's going to call and say, Steve, how come you didn't have Mindy on? Because, you know, you're a man kind of like some other men that if you've got a really great wife, you know, you are just in her orbit sometimes.
Right, and she's smarter anyway.
She is brilliant. But we're going to try and let you... Mindy let Dave out today, and he's going to come and... how are those crab cakes?
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, so there it is, Dave Sass. So, Dave, I don't know... First, I want to talk about your business a little bit. You run Northwest Plumbing, right?
Yes.
And how long have you been plumbing here in the St. Helens, Columbia County area?
Since 1991.
Yeah, and I'll give you guys a personal plug. Dave's company plumbed my house from the street to the house. We redid all the plumbing, and all works great. And he did an amazing job. His company did an amazing job. And so I know you obviously do residential, top to bottom, and then any other areas you work in, Dave, Northwest?
Pretty much any structures here in Columbia County.
Okay, and I know you got a crew, and you've got a building out there right on the highway, right?
Correct.
Yeah, and so Dave is here today. I don't think we're going to talk about plumbing too much today. We're going to talk about fishing.
It's a much better subject.
I know, way more interesting than plumbing. Of course, you know, what is it that you don't think about the plumbing till it doesn't work. That's when you think about the plumbing.
But you always think about fishing.
Yeah, always thinking about fishing. And so here we are. We're getting primed for the spring Chinook season. And Dave and I are both avid fishermen. You and I have been out on the river together a number of times, Dave. And you are one of the best fishermen on the river. I'm going to say that right now.
At times. Other times I'm the worst.
Well, yep, but Dave's batting percentage, I'm going to put you right up there with Rick Scholl, and that's quite a compliment.
He catches quite a few fish.
Yeah, he's a hell of a fisherman, too. But you and he are in, I would just try to be in the local all-star league as far as local fishermen are concerned. But before we get too much into fishing, tell us a little bit about your background. When did you come to the Columbia County area, would you say?
I think we moved out here either late 1991 or early 1992 and bought a little house in Scappoose. And I think in 96 built a house in Warren, and then in 2007 built the house we live in Warren.
And where did you come from? You came in 91. Where did you come from?
From Phoenix, Arizona.
Oh, wow.
Which is where Mindy was born.
You came from the desert. And what about you? What's your background?
I actually moved to Phoenix from the Midwest in Illinois, a small town there where I lived until I was 16.
Okay, 16. And then what brought you to Arizona?
Work.
And was that plumbing work then?
Yes, it was, actually.
Okay, and did you fish in Arizona? It's kind of desert-like.
I did what I could in Arizona, and finally told my wife I'm leaving Arizona, and I said, you can come with me. She said, "Where are you going?" I said, "Someplace wet." So we literally got an atlas and looked it up. And I said, somewhere in Northwest Oregon or Washington area. She got us both into the University of Portland, and we moved up and attended the University of Portland and did a couple jobs out in Scappoose and St. Helens. And I grabbed her, put her in the car, said, "Let's drive out here and find a place to live." And that was the end of that.
And the rest is history.
Yep.
How old were you about when you came out with Mindy?
20, I believe.
20?
Mm-hmm.
And I guess you'd had enough. You had so much desert, you decided you wanted a lifetime of rain.
That is correct.
Well, you chose the right place.
I got plenty of rain.
Yeah, March 1, it's still raining.
It is raining.
But
very
you know,
cold rain.
Yeah, as my father-in-law said, it rains here in Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
But, rain brings a lot of good things. It brings fish and fish habitat and fish food. And wetness of the ground and green things. Rain is a blessing.
And the snow's even a bigger blessing for our fish because it's packing on heavy right now on Mount Hood. Should be good returns of fish this year.
That's awesome. So how does the snowpack at Mount Hood affect the fishing in the Columbia for those of us that love fishing the Columbia?
It allows the flows of the river to be where they need to be in order for the fish in the ocean to smell their home stream. Okay. And it's like 2 years ago, that really didn't happen. And a lot of fish were stuck at the mouth of the Sandy and other rivers because there was just simply not enough flow to allow them to physically swim up to their spawning beds. And I believe 2 years ago it made a lot of fish not return into the river system and just stay in the ocean an extra year and return the next year when the water levels and flows were sufficient to allow them to come in.
That there may be something to that. So you think the fish actually in the ocean have a sense of what it's going to be like on the other end when they get there?
Well, I mean, they either smell their river in sufficient amount to pull them in, or they don't, is what I think.
Yeah, and let's talk about one of the other theories that I have, and this is a personal theory. Is that when you have low rainfall and low snowpack, you get a lot more fish mortality for the fry and the smolts. That the water heats up, there's not as much water, there's not as much feed, everything that water brings is less, and therefore you get less fish just make it. What do you think about that?
That's absolutely correct. As well as having low, clear water opens them up to predation as well. When there's riffly, somewhat stained water, it takes a lot of birds out of the equation and things like raccoons, etc.
Yeah, the fish are so yeah, that's a big deal. And I think one thing that I've noticed is that over the last few years our fish returns have been pretty good.
They've been okay.
Okay, I think it wasn't last year kind of a record in the fall. We're talking about the fall.
In the fall, that is a recent record, yes. There used to be 7 million fish returning to the Columbia River. Now we jump up and down if we get over 1 million in a year.
What was last year's number?
I would have to, this was all returns. I believe we're right about 1.2 or 1.3 million. I don't have the exact.
Spring and fall.
Spring, fall, Chinook, silver, sockeye, etc.
So for those of the now I know you're not here as a biologist, but I want to talk to you about, for those of us that don't know a lot about fishing and what they say about salmon. I like it when I taste it. I know what it tastes like. But there are different species of salmon. There's the Chinook, there's the coho, and what other species swim right by our beautiful town here?
Sockeye and some chum salmon.
Chum salmon, okay. And then I've heard about Thule salmon. Do they come by here too?
Thule is a subspecies of the Chinook.
Okay.
And they are actually known to travel up the Lewis River and spawn there.
So they don't go very far up?
Not usually. There's one species that goes right up to right around Bonneville Dam.
And the Chinook that swim by here, approximately, I'm not asking for a GPS coordinate here, but how far up do the Chinook go that swim by St. Helens, some of them, how far up do they go in the United States? Where do they go?
So the spring Chinook that come through here can go all the way to Riggins, Idaho. which is up the Columbia, up the Snake, up the Salmon, and then up the Little Salmon. So it is quite like 900 miles, 1,000 miles.
Could a person take one of these boats? You know, one of my dreams is to get on what I call them RV boats, and you know, spend some time going all the way up. How far up could a person travel? Could a person travel that far up river if they had the right boat?
I'm not sure what the dams are like, but I know that barges go all the way up into the Snake River and up to Lewiston. I believe a boat could keep going from there pretty much all the way.
So you're an avid fisherman, and then you've gotten involved with a group called the Coastal Conservation Association. Am I correct there?
Yes.
And I can tell you, I've recently joined the Coastal Conservation Association. And what is your current position with the Coastal Conservation Association?
So I'm the Columbia County chapter president, and I am also part of the state board and on the government relations committee of the state board. And our state board meets once quarterly in Salem.
Okay, and what is the state? How's the state board? Well, we're going to get into that for a second. So let's talk a little bit about the Coastal Conservation Association. What is that organization briefly? What is it?
So it's now nationwide. It was started in Texas by a bunch of wealthy oil men because commercial fishermen were decimating the red drum out off the coast of Louisiana and Texas. And that was their sport fishing deal. So they conglomerated together, got a lot of money together, and started lobbying in Texas to change the laws on what type of gear can be used and where this gear can be used, as to allow the redfish to once again repopulate. They also sponsored money up for producing hatcheries, which also helped the population get back to where it was. And now, thanks to them, all these years later, it's one of the best fisheries in the whole southern part of the United States.
And how long has the Coastal Conservation Association been involved with the Columbia River and the salmon population going up and down the Columbia River?
2007, Gary Loomis brought the CCA to Oregon and Washington. It started out as CCA Pacific Northwest. Then we got more organized, split off into Oregon, which I believe we have 7 or 9 chapters now. And then Washington has, I believe, 11 chapters up there.
So the state of Washington has chapters, and then Oregon has 9 chapters.
I believe that
7.
is correct. I'm not 100% sure.
I think I saw this morning, I was taking a look at the website, I think it is 9 chapters. And are you associated with any particular chapter?
Just Columbia County.
So Columbia County has its own chapter.
Correct.
And then does every other county have its own chapter? Is that how it's organized?
There is Hood River has a chapter over there. There's what's called Willamette Falls chapter. They're just kind of, there's a coastal chapter, there's a Salem chapter, and I can't remember what they called, Lynn Benton chapter for down by Albany and Eugene and stuff. So they're just kind of regionally named chapters, and it's all on our website. You can find out which chapter is easy enough to serve you.
Yeah, and I went on the internet today to do a little research, and it's CCA Association, Coastal Conservation Association. Anybody who is a fisherman on the Columbia River, fisherwoman, and this includes guides and even commercial people, should be very aware and frankly belong to the Coastal Conservation Association. And I think as we get more into this show, your people who are fishing and are fishermen and have any desire to catch a fish ever, or want to just see the fishery continue, should be a full participant in the Coastal Conservation Association for a lot of different reasons. And so we began the show with talking about smolt, and the salmon start in the streams and in the rivers. Some start in Idaho, some start in Oregon, some start in Washington, and they're born in the streams or they're born in hatcheries, right?
Correct.
And then I had read somewhere. In fact, I think I read an article that was put out by the Oregon Fisheries that Oregon Fisheries hatcheries released about 40 million fry or smolts, 40 million hatchery smolts into the system. Just one in, I think it was 2021. I think that's the numbers. That sound about right?
That could be. I have not kept up on those numbers.
Okay, so we have a bunch of different hatcheries that we got the fish that go up and do their business in the streams, and these are hatchery fish and fish that were not raised in hatchery. They spawn in the streams, and then their eggs are laid, and then they're eaten. Right, the eggs are eaten as much as anything that can eat an egg will eat an egg.
That is correct.
And then you got the hatchery ones, where the hatchery a little more survivability because the hatchery eggs are protected from predators. The hatchery eggs are given antibiotics. The hatchery eggs are in a little more controlled environment, so they have a greater opportunity for survivability than the stream eggs.
Correct.
Okay. And so then the fish grow up, and they start swimming at some point. How long do they live in the river approximately before they start swimming down toward the ocean?
It's just a few months. They put on a lot of weight, get a lot of body size, and then they head right on out to the ocean and either become prey or predators, one of the two.
Yeah, I think they're always prey. Pretty much.
They could be, yes.
I mean, they come back in as full adults, and I know they're prey that I'm going after.
Right.
And I see the seals going after them.
Mm-hmm.
And then I know when the fish get up into the the bears go after them. I've seen the movies where the bears are trying to grab them, and I know their tribes up there with their nets. They're trying to net them and throw them in the tribal buckets, right?
Absolutely.
And so from the time that they leave, but they also are predators. They're eating bugs and other fish and whatever they eat along the way, krill and shrimps and you name it, whatever.
Absolutely, it's a unique ecosystem out there.
And so you have these little fish that are born all over Oregon, all over the United States, Washington, Iowa, all these places, and now they're born. They're released either from hatchery or they're released just naturally, and down they go, and they head out, and eventually they reach the ocean through the Big Columbia River, and along the way, everything they can eat them is trying to eat them.
That is correct.
And then they get into the ocean, everything they can eat them is trying to eat them.
That's right, and they're trying to eat everything they can.
And they get big, and they get strong. Hopefully there's enough feed out there in the oceans, correct?
Correct.
And then they come on back up. And then you've got people trying to catch them as they head back up into their native or to their native waters to spawn.
Now, they're also being targeted in their, I would say, adolescent years waters up in the Gulf of Alaska, off the coast of British Columbia, etc. Most of the fish in the Columbia River, as I understand, turn north when they leave the Columbia River and do their growing through their life cycle to the north of us, make a big circle, then come back down after being out there 3 to 5 years and re-enter the river to complete their life cycle.
And so this is a good thing to think about because I'm coming back to the CCA, believe it or not, folks. But these are fish that are sought after by not only things in nature, but human beings are trying to get these fish wherever they go.
They're big money, yes.
And they're good to eat. I mean, that's where the money is, right? I'm going to throw one in my bucket, and I'm going to sell it to Costco or sell it to the restaurant. Somebody's going to buy it, and that's the that's the financial, commercial side of things.
So Gary Loomis's best saying that he ever told me was, the demise of the salmon was when we learned how to can them.
Yeah.
Because then there was no limit to what we could do with them.
Well, I'm thinking back to the history of St. Helens, there was the Packers Association.
Yep.
And that was actually, historically a very, I probably should get Brandon Sundin in here and Les Waters to talk about this, but my understanding it was kind of like a price fixing association. We're going to can them. We're going to get we're going to fix the prices on this thing.
Could have been.
And then, as I recall, there were times when back in the day when nets were strung across Columbia, and then there were a lot of packing going on.
Absolutely, it was a free for all.
It was a free for all, and then is this Gary Loomis? Same Loomis Rods?
Yes.
Wow. Okay. Well, there you go. There's a plug for Loomis Rods. In case any of you are out there thinking about a salmon rod. Maybe.
Actually, he sold Loomis to one of the bigger Shimano, actually, and he started a new rod company called Edge Rods, and it's about probably 5 years old now, 6 years old.
Edge Rods.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, and for those of you that are thinking about a new salmon rod this year, you're looking for the 9.5 to 10 footers, as I understand it. Edge Rods for Mr. Loomis. So coming back to the salmon, we got the Canadians up there in British Columbia. We got the Alaska people trying to get at these things. We've got the state of Washington involved. They're out there in international waters. Then they go by Washington, Oregon, Idaho, and the tribes. We have several tribal organizations or tribal governments that are claiming rights to these salmon.
Both here in Oregon and up in Puget Sound. I guess in Puget Sound it's a lot more convoluted with the tribal interest than it is down here on the Columbia River, because the tribes are basically working all together here on the Columbia River, so they are basically one voice. But from what I understand, in the Puget Sound area, I believe they said 14 different tribes that represent themselves. So if you guys think we have a bad time down here on the Columbia with regulations and disbursements of fish to different user groups, I guess the sound up there in Seattle is just a whole different rattlesnake.
Wow. And so you've got and there's a CCA up in that Seattle area, correct?
Yes, absolutely.
And the CCA is really focused on the sport or recreational fishermen, correct?
Yes.
And these are the folks that I think the folks that know fishing. I've probably seen you out there on the river. You're out there in your boat. You're out there on the shore. Out there trying to catch these fish as they're going by. Hundreds and hundreds of boats, thousands of fishermen, just in our area, that you can just drive out from either Scappoose Bay Marina or St. Helens Marina, and you're going to see on big fishing days 200-300 boats, 1,000 people out there trying to catch these fish as they go by on the run.
That is correct.
Yeah, and then, for those of us that actually travel in our boats, you go to other places on the river, all up and down. The fishermen are everywhere. They're all up and down this river.
Yeah, they're shoulder to shoulder on the Salmon River over in Idaho. They're in the pools by up in northern Idaho. The town escapes me now. Orofino. They're sitting there at the Clearwater. In November, I've seen them myself. It'll be 0 outside, and those guys are out there side to side to side, about 5 boats wide, fishing for steelhead in the middle of winter. The Drano area up there, just tons of boats doing a big merry-go-round troll. And then, of course, around here, people anchored, trolling on the banks. I mean, Dibley's, Prescott, you go down there, and there's, on a good day, you'll have 100, 150 people out there with fishing rods out, just enjoying a good day on the bank, waiting for their pole to go down and reel in a salmon. And then the iconic fishery of the Columbia is the Buoy 10 fishery in August and September, where you could easily have 1,000, 1,500 boats at a time down there and just jump in the mix and have fun.
And what I see when for those of you, it's great imagery and great imagery to hearing about the people. We're talking about culture, human culture. We're talking about a human need, whether you be a tribal person or a person who is now living here and enjoying the outdoors. This is a human need to actually get out there and be part of nature. Hunting and fishing is a basic part of our driven instinct.
That is correct.
And
yes.
And also, it's a family thing. There's women out there. There's kids out there. When these fish are caught, they're brought back home. They're cooked up. There's celebration. That this is a magical and wonderful species of fish that we are bound with in a very ancient way.
Yes, and that's why there's such a fight for the resource.
That the fight for the resource, and that is, and one of the things that I say on this thing is that we all want the same thing, and that's more fish. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The CCA is fish first.
Fish first. Yeah, and I go back to my father-in-law, old Benny Sharp. He's got a great saying, and that is, they got to be there to catch them. If they're,
That's exactly right.
I mean, you can go out there and drag your lure out there right now in the Columbia, and you probably are not going to even see a fish, let alone catch one.
That's correct. You'd probably have just as much luck in your bathtub.
Exactly. You'd have the same odds.
And you'd be a lot warmer.
A lot warmer, and you could be reading a book and everything else, and you wouldn't be burning gas. So, yeah, it's thousands of people, tens of thousands of people, and it's billions of dollars. We're talking about the boat industry, the fishing tackle industry, gasoline, electric boats, kayaks. You guys see guys out there in kayaks. You see guys fishing from the shore. This is a gigantic piece of the economy, is the recreational fishermen.
Absolutely. People fly here from all around the United States to both participate in the spring Chinook fishery because they are rated as the best as far as food fare goes. And then also Buoy 10 fishery, the fall fishery. There's thousands of people come in from other states just because it's so much fun. There's more fish per amount of time in the river system at that time. And yes, it's a huge economic boon for Columbia County, Clatsop County, the Portland metro area, etc.
And so the CCA is really involved, along with a lot of the other folks, is looking at the science of how these fish live.
Yes.
And trying to protect the fish.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah, I think it'd be wrong to say that the CCA is just about making sure that the recreational fisherman gets what they can. I think it'd be more correct to say that the CCA is about making sure there's enough fish for everyone.
Yes, resource first.
Resource first.
And that jumps right into our hatcheries, making sure our hatcheries are funded. Because unfortunately right now there's a few groups around that want to defund the hatcheries because they see the hatchery fish as a detriment to the wild fish that are left out there, which I would argue a wild fish is a hatchery descendant. Because back in the 30s when hatcheries were first put in, there was no science like what we have today that would differentiate hatchery fish versus a fish that spawned on the gravel bed. They were just salmon. And that's how everybody saw them back then. They weren't clean like they are now about making sure that a hatchery-raised fish does not get up on native spawning beds and supposedly contaminate natives' eggs with its sperm that really didn't even come up until maybe the 80s or 90s. So there's 50 years of wild escapement of hatchery fish onto wild spawning grounds.
Yeah, and I think that it's like saying, how do we go back? I mean, you said at one point in time there were 7 million fish that would go up the Columbia River, and we're celebrating now if we get 1 million.
Correct.
And if we get, there's no going backwards in this world. As much as people are very fond of thinking, oh, if only I could have the old times back. Boy, things were so good back in the day. But there is no going backwards with human population. There's no going backwards with where we live. There's no going backwards with our increasing population. It's going to continue to increase. We're going to continue to have these pressures. Our world is one that we have forged and created, and my opinion is that we are going to continue to carve out where the wild things are going to be and whether they're going to be here in the long run.
Well, in my opinion, as long as there's increased human population, the wild is going to disappear. It's been disappearing for years. I mean, I've recognized places that were hay fields and forests when I first moved here, and then housing subdivisions or individual houses or other structures went in. Well, there goes the deer, there go the elk, there go the geese grazing in the field. You move into areas near rivers or streams, you're going to change the landscape there, which is going to allow more sunlight over a stream, less canopy, etc. It's going to affect spawning fish. Also, your pets running in and out of the streams. Everything has an effect on everything, really.
There used to be salmon that went at Milton Creek, and you talked to a guy named like Jerry Belcher, local guy in town. He used to actually go dive in Milton Creek and count salmon, and they used to trap them and count them. No sense in it anymore because they're not there anymore. And we're talking about a generation. We're talking within one generation, a man, as a young man, will go out and catch and trap and count salmon in Milton Creek, and if you go out now, and you're going to count none.
That is correct.
Yeah, and how did that happen? Well, Milton Creek area, when you go up Milton Creek, it's really a fairly rural area. But whoever has done whatever up there has managed to kill and eliminate the spawning grounds. People just, they're going to go in and catch them. They see the fish in there, they're going to catch them.
Well, it's not only a lot of things that were done on purpose, it was just things that were done that nobody thought about.
That's
that would
right.
interfere with the fish. I mean, they have their mind made up. I'm going to put my driveway here. I'm going to have to put a little culvert in right here. Well, unknowingly, they may have put the culvert at a wrong elevation and not allowed the fish to pass through that culvert when they used to just swim up the river before they put a culvert there to be able to drive onto their property. And it's no maliceness or anything. It's just humans moving forward and not thinking of everything because they just weren't aware of what to think about.
And so the hatchery's been around for 50 years plus.
Oh, probably 75, 80 years.
And so we're coming back to nature, and remember that number 40 million, okay? So the hatcheries are dumping 40 million smolt at the top of these streams, and they're swimming out into the ocean. Every single thing that eats that salmon is competing for that smolt. So you're talking about cormorants, seagulls, walleye, sturgeon, you name it. As those smolt go out, they're all being fed, and all of their populations have increased over many, many years, have been supported by the hatcheries releasing fish into the ocean. And when those fish hit the ocean, millions, 40 million fish from these are from the Oregon hatcheries alone, by the way. When they hit the ocean, everything that eats a salmon is eating those. And so all of the populations of every single animal that eats a salmon has been buoyed and increased and is at a larger population due to the hatcheries being in place for 75 years. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Without a doubt. Because we've been feeding the wildlife for all these years.
That is correct.
And they're out there every year. They depend on them.
Oh, yes, definitely.
And so then recently I know that there was a discussion about protecting the orcas, that the orcas eat, I guess, a lot of Chinook.
So what has happened is that the southern orcas off the coast of Oregon have now reached endangered species status. So with that, they are now looking at funding more hatcheries to put more salmon, which salmon are one of their main food sources. They're seeing the need to produce more hatchery salmon to help the population of orcas off the coast of Oregon and southern Washington.
And that would be good for the recreational fishermen, and because that just means more salmon going down. Hopefully, will mean more salmon return.
Yep.
On a very basic level, there's got to be enough feed out there in the ocean for them too. I mean, when they get out to the ocean, there's a whole other ecosystem out there that determines how big they get and whether they come back or not.
Yes.
And one of those things, when they get out in the ocean, there's big trawlers out there scooping them up in giant nets.
There's a lot lost to what we call bycatch. They're targeting other fish, but unfortunately, salmon and steelhead juveniles get caught and killed in the process. It's one thing that CCA, I mean, it's easy to see a problem, but we kind of say don't bring up a problem unless you have a answer to it. And some of that stuff is very tricky to get into. I mean, we cannot shut down an entire fishery because we all eat the fish. Everybody goes to anywhere from McDonald's to Burger King, whatever. You get a fish sandwich, it's coming out of one of those boats. So you have to weigh feeding ourselves and trying to do it without crushing the wrong species at the same time.
Yeah, and how are people working on that?
There's always studies being done. There have been a lot of gear changes, actually, with like ground fish. I saw maybe 3 years ago a video of a trawl net that was drug along the bottom to get bottom fish, and if there was a fish big enough to open a gate, it would let it out, which was the what am I thinking? The big bottom fish everybody loves.
Lingcod?
No.
Rockfish?
No, the
grouper?
No, the flat ones.
Oh, halibut.
Halibut, yes, I'm sorry.
That's
I don't know why I spaced on that. But anyway, it showed him dragging, and then about a 45-pound halibut gets stuck in there, gate pops open, and he goes back. So there is work being done pretty much everywhere to try to limit bycatch in every fishery.
I think there was a kind of I think I read an article where the Canadians were sort of coming under fire for having too much bycatch on Chinook.
Yes. And that's the juvenile Chinook.
And then that's one of the things they're trying to say, we need more fish for orcas.
More fish for everything, basically. I mean, the whole goal is to try to get bycatch down to near nothing and only catch your target species at the targeted weight and size. And
now I've been noticing a lot more seals. Back in the day, I'm 62 years old, okay, so I'm a young man. But in my lifetime, the seal population has exploded.
It absolutely has. The Endangered Species Act did its job with the seals and sea lions.
Are they off the endangered species?
Some of them are. Some of them are not.
Okay.
So that keeps it as a sticky little contentious point. There has been work done to remove certain seals from the Willamette River and the Columbia River, but it is a very long, arduous process to get one sea lion taken care of. There's nothing you can do except for basically euthanize them.
Right. There should be a killback.
Numbers should be reduced greatly inside the Columbia River. Historically, They never came up here. They didn't have to. They had plenty of food down at the coast. But now the seals and sea lions have exploded in their population and will take advantage of anything that comes up the river. Right now, if you see all these seals and sea lions out there and hear them at night,
there's hundreds.
Yes, they're following smelt up.
Right.
And they're sitting at the Cowlitz River right now. I just saw a video this morning of probably, I'm guessing, 800 seals sitting there on the banks. That's a lot of fish that are being eaten by those seals and sea lions.
I would really like a sealskin coat. I think that'd be the coolest thing. Nice long coat. I mean, why not?
Well,
I know it's
I'm not
unpopular.
sure how you can legally get that.
No,
but,
I think we should change the laws. That's the point.
So that literally takes an act of Congress.
And I think that's one thing. I'm sure at some point we have to realize that as much as we feel emotionally attached to a species, we as human beings are what are keeping those species alive.
Oh, absolutely. Everything has to be in a balance, and unfortunately, science gets thrown out the window too often because of politics.
Yeah, and people, oh my God, the seals are so cute. We can't kill the seals. The thing is that these hatcheries run on money, right?
Yes.
And so when we're talking about what are we going to do with hatcheries, it costs. People want to get out of their obligations to raise to run hatcheries because they're expensive.
That is correct.
And so when the public says things like, "Oh, our seal," what we've got is an overabundance of seals that are literally eating the salmon that we are paying to raise and bring up.
That is correct, unfortunately.
And so when we say, "Oh yeah, let's make more salmon for the orcas," well, okay, but the thing is that that's going to cost $1 billion. Who knows how much it's going to cost? A lot to create a hatchery and make a hatchery.
And where's the money going to come from?
Well, hopefully, if I were to wave a tax wand, I would hit everybody with it. But that's probably an unpopular opinion. But the fact of the matter is that where is the money going to come from? There's only so much money to go around, and there's only so much we can, as human beings, produce on our end. And at some point, there's got to be a thought of reduction. If we want, 1 million more salmon for the orcas to eat, we probably need to be eliminating the seals that are eating them right now.
There are too many sea lions and seals in the Columbia River right now. Way too many.
These are things that people need to talk about, and the idea, and what I say to you out there that are thinking, oh, well, let's just let it go back to nature. I say, wake up and understand where you live, because the fact of the matter is that if it weren't for the protections for nature right now, there'd be no nature. The only reason we have any salmon whatsoever is that these hatcheries were built in the first place. There are regulations concerning streams and destructions of streams. If those things weren't in place, if humans weren't interfering with humans trying to do what they do, every salmon would be dead right now. And so your idea of, let's just remove regulations, let's just remove things, you need to, I would spend more time educating yourself and understanding that we live in a terrarium. The Earth is a terrarium. What do you think about
we humans have changed nature.
We have. I mean, you go back even in the wild, where the elk are and the deer are. When there aren't enough bucks killed, and you can't reduce the population doesn't get reduced, then you end up with sick deer, dying deer, dead deer.
That is correct.
And so, unfortunately, there's billions of us, 8 billion on the planet right now, and managing our wildlife, we need to be carving out very strong laws to make sure that we preserve our wildlife and we live alongside our wildlife, which means having enough people interested in keeping it around, like the Ducks Unlimited. They set aside ponds and areas where wildlife can habitat, wetlands, so that the ducks will continue to be alive.
So they were able to purchase those lands. It's a little bit harder for us to purchase a stream or a section of a river.
So coming back to the CCA and the work you're doing, so the CCA is involved in the management of this wonderful fishery, the Chinook salmon fishery and other fisheries in the Columbia, where there are negotiations going on between Oregon, between different counties in Oregon, between Oregon and Washington, between Oregon, Washington, the United States of America, between Oregon, Washington, the United States of America, Canada, and Alaska, and the the various tribes that also are, saying we have rights. They claim them. They're recognized. Idaho, and all of these entities are working together to try to forge one thing, and that is, let's preserve this resource, let's increase this resource.
That's exactly right, and at the same time, everybody's fighting to be able to catch them.
And everybody wants more.
Yes, there's allocations for the commercials. There's allocations for the tribes. Actually, the tribes are bound by a U.S. treaty, so there's really no fighting that, and I have no interest in fighting that. The rest of it is the fight between Oregon and Washington when they are not combined together as one, and which they are not right now. And then fighting British Columbia. There is an agreement right now that takes us off of the river at times in the fall to protect the Thule subspecies of the Chinook salmon, because when they re-enter the lower river here, they're pretty much a lower river fish. So when they get in the river, they're already starting to lose their fat because their eggs are getting really highly developed and their sperm is getting highly developed. So when they eat up their body fat doing that, the meat turns whitish, maybe light pink, light orange. It loses a lot of the protein and a lot of the good flavor and texture. So those fish are basically trash fish, in air quotes, for anglers and people who want to eat them here in the Columbia River system. So many people just throw them away. Some people keep them because of their size. But when they're getting through their adolescence and becoming adults, up in the waters off British Columbia, they are a well sought after fish, because up there their meat is still nice and firm and pink, and or bright red, I guess is the right color to put it, and they're good table fare up there. So we have a treaty right now that restricts our take of these fish, which only grow up in the Columbia River. They are not from anywhere else. We have hatcheries that provide these fish, a couple of lower river hatcheries. We must protect those fish for the Canadian people to be able to take them.
Because they taste good when they're in Canada.
Yes, yes.
And they want to have enough when they get there to where they can eat them, and then enough come back to where they spawn and go back to Canada.
That is correct. And in turn for that, we were supposed to have our spring salmon left alone in their waters. Now, how they can tell that, oh, there's a spring salmon from the Columbia River, let's throw that one back, I don't know how that happens.
I see. So there's some issues there.
That issue is going to be revisited here, I was told, in the next year or two. It's a 10-year cycle, so I personally am going to be attending those meetings to try to get that squared away a little bit, because as far as I know, we don't receive any cash for that, and I don't really think we get anything in return. I think we got a promise in return, and I don't know how well that promise is able to be kept, even if it had good intentions.
Yeah, there's a big screw-up 2 years ago because they ended the season early because we had huge returns, and they did not calculate on huge returns, and I think once there was a certain number of Thule stock allegedly caught, then the season was going to shut down, and then that ended up shutting our fall season down.
That is
really
correct.
Early 2 years.
Yes.
We had record returns with no fishing.
Yes.
But then they said they were going to fix it, and they plugged to ODF and W. I actually said, you guys said you were going to fix this thing, and you did, because we had record returns last year, but we were able to keep fishing.
That is correct. I think a lot of it is education as well. People are thinking twice about taking a Thule and harvesting it.
Yeah, let them go. You can tell they're kind of muddy anyway.
They have
just
big
don't even
spots,
take them in the boat.
Especially the copper-colored fish that you pull out of the river. Just let them go.
Yeah, let them go.
Even if it's your first one, let it go. There's a brighter one coming around the corner.
Yeah, I mean, plus the meat's kind of white and everything.
Yeah,
else.
you're doing a coin toss when you kill and cut a Thule. You may have one that's nice and edible, and you may have another one that you're like, why did I do this?
So one point here, I know we're going to run out of time, but I'm going to make one point, and then we're going to talk a little bit more about the CCA. But one point for those that are listening that are thinking, well, hatcheries, and maybe we should be taking the hatcheries out of the system, and or that's a good idea. I think one thing you need to think about, and that is that if we take the hatcheries out and we don't release as many fish, first thing that's going to happen is all the populations that are already out there waiting for those fish will eat them. And then we're talking about a release of 40 million fish and a return of 1 million. You take 40 million fish out of the system, you are probably going to look at wiping out the species within 1 year. There is no science whatsoever to support that. There's zero science to support that if we take hatcheries out of the system, the species will survive. The species will be wiped out in 1 year. And so I think you need to be really careful discussing about something that's been going on for 75 years, and suddenly you're going to eliminate that from the system. And at the same time, we're talking about feeding orcas and seals. So you're going to be working as a CCA to basically make sure that habitats are preserved?
Yes.
And that the fish have as great opportunity to spawn naturally as they possibly can?
Yes.
Strengthening regulations in that regard?
Yes, visiting everything we need to visit. There's no limit. I mean, every angle, either something's trying to get the fish or something's trying to trade the fish. So every day, basically, there's a new fight. Either somebody has a new idea to do this or new idea to do that, and we just have to be on guard constantly. We're putting a lot of our people on different commissions on Fish and Wildlife, both in Washington and Oregon, so that we can have a say in what goes on. If it gets listened to, that's another debate. But
of course, it's listened to. I think everybody's got a voice in the controversy.
Well, a lot of times it appears that the decisions of the Fish and Wildlife departments are foregone before they hear testimony.
Well, CCA is political, right? You guys support political candidates?
We have a PAC, but we do not endorse political candidates. We're a 501c3.
Okay.
So we're not allowed to do a direct endorsement. Okay.
So there's a political action committee, so you you make sure candidates know the position of the CCA?
Yes, we have some very pro-CCA senators in Oregon right now. Senator Girard is the main one that's always pushing our agenda forward as far as funding hatcheries and cleaning up a bad stream or whatever has to happen. He's like our number one go-to guy.
You're not all about hatcheries. You're all about whatever produces more fish.
The resource.
Okay, so if you're a fisherman and you fish on the Columbia River, you should belong to the CCA. Oh, there's a big tournament coming up. Sign up with CCA, big tournament, March 15 to May 11, and a big banquet, right?
Yes, sir.
So go online, learn more about the CCA. Dave Sass, thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for the work you're doing. Don't assume because you're out there with the fishing rod that it's all happening naturally. There are a lot of people working to get the fish there. It is a complicated thing, and we need to thank guys like Dave and everybody else that are working together to make sure this resource continues. Thank you again, Dave.
No problem, and it's snowing quite hard right now.
Yes, it's snowing. Oh, wow. Okay, well, good. I guess I'll go fish in my bathtub since there's no fish out there right now, so going by anyway. So come on in for the crab cakes, and see you all next Friday.
You've been listening to St. Helens Town Talk Cafe with Steve Toski. You can email your comments on the show to Steve in care of kohi.radio@gmail.com. And be sure to listen again next time for another St. Helens Town Talk Cafe radio show on KOHI.